Hello and welcome back to The Couch, or hi, hello, welcome if you are new. My name's Rosie Jenner, and today we are talking about books again. I don't know why I just don't come up with like a bookish slogan, because every week I seem to introduce with apologising that I don't talk about anything else. But yes, welcome to The Couch, where we snuggle up and read. Woo! So this week I wanted to do my very own version of the Goodreads Awards, because I'm very aware that it's that time of year where everyone announces their favourite books of the year. And I think that it's really cute to do that. So we're going to do that, and then if we run out of time, we'll talk about what I was meant to be talking about next week, but we won't get ahead of ourselves. So, if you're unaware, Goodreads is unfortunately owned by Amazon, I believe, and it's basically a website where you can track all of your reading. You can set a goal for the whole year, which I haven't reached, and basically say what you want to read, what you're currently reading, blah blah blah. And every year they host an award. And it's basically like Barnes and Noble, Waterstones, all of the other awards that there are, where everyone picks different genres of their favourite book. So I thought I would go through the genres that they have given us, and try and slot a book in there. However, if you know me, I read a very select number of genres, and I'm really picky about what I read. So I'm not sure that I'll be able to actually tick off every genre that's in the awards. Yes, I'm still voice recording. That's amazing. So I can get up my list of books that I've been reading throughout the year. So, apologies for my cold, but without no further ado, let's do the Good Couch Book Awards, because what else would we call it? So starting off with the fiction category, I think this is a stupid category to involve, because there is fiction and non-fiction, and then within those there's like a bunch of categories that are either fiction or non-fiction. But I will start by announcing my overall favourite fiction book of the year, and that was definitely The Seas by Samantha Hunt. I picked up this book because I thought it sounded a bit like how I was as a teenager and about what I wanted to write about. It's about a girl who's convinced that she was born as a mermaid and is now living on land, and it is just phenomenal. It's gritty, it's grotesque, it's moving, and it's just really real, and I freaking loved it. So obviously I gave it 5 out of 5s, and I haven't stopped thinking about this book since. So much so that after I listened to it on Scribd, I ordered the special hardback, and it is just magnificent, and I think it's a beautiful book. I think definitely if you're in your early 20s and you've had sort of strange relationships, rough relationships, you've had a strange relationship with yourself, with your family, with a boyfriend, whatever, like it encompasses so many elements of life into this one brilliant book about a girl who thinks that she can breathe underwater. It's just fantastic. So that is my fiction book of the year. So the next one is mystery and thriller, and I feel like there are so many books that fit into this category, but for this one I think I'm going to give it to Society for Solar Scales, and the reason is that it is part mystery, and I have other ideas for the horror section. We've talked about the Society for Solar Scales and how much I've loved it in the first episode, so by all means you can go back and listen to my thoughts. I just think it's a great book. Really love it. Laura Stevens, a lovely woman. I believe she goes by she, her pronouns. My apologies. Yeah, I just think it's a really great book. So the next one is historical fiction, and honestly, I hate historical fiction, which is so bad to say because I know so many people love it, but it's just not my cup of tea. So for this one, I'm going to say What Moves the Dead, because although, yes, it is set in the past, and yes, I suppose it could be historical, but it didn't feel very historical to me. It just kind of felt like a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. So I believe that this one still counts, even though it's primarily meant to be horror, but T. Kingfisher did a really good reimagination with What Moves the Dead. So maybe I actually did read a historical fiction this year. Who knows? So the next category is fantasy, and I read a surprising amount of fantasy, especially if you categorize horror as fantasy, this year. But I think, although there are so many that I really want to list as my favourite, I think my favourite probably has to be Blood in the Mist, because it was phenomenal. I think about it all the time. Blood in the Mist is by Hope Mirrlees. I hope I'm saying that right. And it's so good. It's inspired so many elements of the things that we call fantasy nowadays. You know, looking at people like Tolkien and Gaiman and all of those greats. And I just think it's so severely underrated that I have to put it in this section so that I can talk about it. So yes, that being said, I think my favourite fantasy for this year would definitely be Blood in the Mist, especially if we're going on standalones. So then the next would be romance. And after I said that I really love romance last year, in a stroke of absolute change within, didn't read any. So if it counts at all, I'm gonna say that Practical Magic was my favourite romance, because it does have elements of romance. It does mainly feature familial love, but it does have a lot of elements of, you know, finding someone to spend your life with, having children with them, and then into the next book it really focuses on relationships. So not sure if it really counts, but it has romance in it. So I'm gonna say Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman as my favourite romance of the year. And fun fact, she wrote Aquamarine, which I never knew, and it's absolutely sent me spiraling. So yeah, that's that's what I'm gonna say for that one. Science fiction, this is a hard one because I don't really read science fiction anymore. I guess the closest thing to science fiction would probably be The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, and it was translated by Stephen Snyder, and it's great. It's such a good book. I wanted a lot more from it. I rated it a 4 purely because I wanted more, because there are so many things that could be explored or should be explored in my opinion, but it didn't, and for good reason as well. If you read the book, I think you'll understand why things are left out or you're left guessing, but my god, I could read about that world and that person all day. So yes, The Memory Police wins the prize for science fiction. Horror, this is a confusing one for me because it's definitely the category that I read most of, and I was, you know, primarily focusing on horror again this year, but I just don't feel that any of them were particularly standoutish, apart from 2. One of them is just really freaking bizarre, and I don't really know how much it counts as horror, as much as it's contemporary, and the other is just straight up horror, so I think we should give it to them, and then we can slide in a few extra nominations. So for horror, I have to say that Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca was absolutely the most standoutish horror that I read this year. I think it is horrifying. It is grotesque. It is everything I wish I hadn't read, but I'm glad I did. It is disgusting, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. I have a really big fear of flying, and I actually read it on my phone on the way back from holiday, and I have not stopped thinking about it since. And yeah, I just love Eric LaRocca. I think they're a really good author. They're really lovely. The books are all just what horror should be, which is just completely gripping, disturbing, I'm gonna throw up content. So yes, I think that definitely has to be the horror book of the year for me. And the humour category, I never read humour. I think that, I don't know, I just don't get on with it very much. But I want to replace it, and I will replace it with sort of a contemporary horror that makes you laugh, and that would have to go to Mother Thing, because Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth is so good. I just love this book. I think it's just like nothing I've read before. It has a lot of really strange and great sort of insights about motherhood and fertility and stuff, and it's so moving in the worst way, but it makes it the best way. I can't really describe it, but I feel like that needs an honourable mention. And I just want to make sort of an honourable mention to The Change by Kirsten Miller, because we've talked about it before. I freaking loved it. I think it's a phenomenal book that everyone should read. But because I really loved The Seas, I'm gonna have to put it second to The Seas. But because of that, it doesn't really fit into any of these other categories. But I think that, you know, if there was like a dual fiction or like a witchy but not so fantasy, contemporary but I don't know, maybe like a feminist category. I don't know. I just really love that book, and I wanted to give it an honorable mention. So for the non-fiction, I'm going to sort of summarize memoir, autobiography, non-fiction, history, biography into one category, because I only read 2 non-fiction books this year, and obviously I have to talk about my favourite one, which is Wreck by Tom DeFresno. I don't have enough good words to talk about this book. I've talked about it extensively online, in little reviews on my stories, on my Bookstagram, the Zodiac Reader, and I just have so many feelings about this book. It is so good. It's an accumulation of sort of own life combined with the tragedies of a Syrian refugee's life, and art and trauma and familial relationships, as well as deeper relationships, and what happens when we're sort of segregated and pushed to our limits. And I think that it is just so glorious. I did obviously have sort of a preference for the more autobiographical elements. I think the way that Tom writes about his own experiences is just phenomenal. Not to say that the book isn't, you know, overall just genius, but I really enjoyed those personal insights. And yeah, I just wanted to summarize everything into that book, because I feel that it gives everything. It's about art, it's about the self, it's about survival, and becoming, and it's just so good. So yes, that wins my non-fiction prize for the Good Couch Book Award. So there's also a graphic novels and comics category, which I have dabbled, but I haven't read like full volumes, so I'm not sure if it really counts. But one that has been on my radar that I really enjoyed was, I believe it's called Hair Day. Let me just find who it's by. Oh my goodness, my audiobook just started playing. What's it called? Hair Day. I really should know, but I'm just so bad. Where are they? Oh, maybe it's called Wash Day, actually. Let me have a look. Yes, so the Wash Day Diaries is a graphic novel by Jamila Rouser and Robin Smith, and it's basically a graphic novel which is about the beauty and endurance of Black women. It's a lot about Black women and their friendships and about their hair, and I just think it's so delightful, insightful, beautiful, loving. It just has so many good feels in it, and it's something that, you know, we've started to finally talk about properly, you know, about, you know, Black women can be fragile and beautiful as well as strong and resilient. I think the element of friendship, as well as like the accepting yourself and stylizing yourself, is just so fun, and the way it's presented is just beautiful. The purples, the different color palettes, oh my gosh, I just think it's really good, and it really made my day. But I haven't read the full volume yet, as it is quite long, and I can't stare at a screen all day because I don't own it in paperback and my eyes get sore really easily. But yes, I really enjoyed that. So next category is poetry. However, I haven't read any full poetry volumes this year, but having said that, I did buy an anthology of poems about the sea early on in the year, when I started to really go into talking about and going about writing my first novel. Well, the first novel that I've actually started writing a first draft with intent of people reading it. And I love that little collection. I think it's beautiful. You can flip to any page and it describes in some way how you feel about the ocean and how vast and beautiful it is. And yeah, I really loved it. So debut novel is a category, and I don't actually know if I've read any debut novels this year, which is unlike me. So let me just have a little look. So as far as I'm aware, the one that I'm going to mention now has only been in anthologies doing short works, and that would be Gus Moreno with This Thing Between Us. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was haunting. It stayed in my head for so long. It could definitely be in the horror section, but this is their debut novel. Again, why this comes after the non-fiction section, I don't know, but I just think it's something everyone should read. It's basically about this guy who something happens to his wife, and he's trying to sort of communicate with her through different means and coming into contact with this otherworldly sort of being. It's almost as if the end and death are a thing as well as personified, and it's just really intriguing. I think the synopsis mentions that it's about sort of an Alexa coming to life and haunting them, and it's all about tech, but it really isn't. It's mostly about the boundaries between life and death and what happens when those are blurred, and It's so good, and I don't know why, but it just always comes into my head. I think because some elements of it are so profound. My goodness, cough coming back right at this second. But yeah, brilliant novel. So for young adult fiction, gosh, there are so many that I could mention. But I think in general we'll have to go with Twin Crowns by, well, I guess they're both Catherine Webber now. So by Catherine Webber Sang and by Catherine, oh my gosh, what is your name, beautiful? How have I forgotten her name? Catherine Doyle, that's why. It's because I said Catherine Webber and then it set me off because she got married to the original Catherine Webber's brother this year. And I completely blanked because I've been bombarded with their beautiful graduation and marriage pictures and blah blah blah. Anyway, excuses over for my terrible brain, even for friends' names. Twin Crowns is wonderful. I think it's everything that young adult is about. It's about fun but also dark themes. It's about relatability. It's a romantic comedy. It's got areas of stealth and skill, as well as just laughing. Oh my gosh, I am losing my words because my neighbor is being so loud right now. I'm so sorry if you can hear that. All I can hear is screaming and stomping. But without further ado, yes, Twin Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Webber, I believe to be the best YA that I read. And having said that, there is a young adult fantasy section, so I guess it fits into both. In terms of young adult fantasy, gosh, I don't think I'd have anything else to put in there really. Although, yeah, Society for the Soulless Girls, it has some sort of fantasy sci-fi elements. Arguably the Practical Magic series. But instead of doing a young adult fantasy, I'm going to pick a children's book because there is a middle grade and children's section, but I think we will swap out the fantasy section for a little bit of both. So by far this year, my favourite middle grade book, as I believe I've mentioned a few times, was Witchlings by Claribel A. Ortega. I am in love with this book. I think it is the most fun, the most intriguing, just brilliant, heartwarming, close to scary but not scary book that I've probably read in a very long time. I really love Claribel Ortega. She's a wonderful writer. Their books are all just in the genre that I want to read. I originally read the book Ghost Squad, I believe either last year or the year before that, and I just thought it was brilliant. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and when I heard that Witchlings was coming out, of course I pre-ordered it. Now the second one's coming out and I am in love. I don't have enough good things to say about this book. That's the second time I've used that phrase in probably my life, but also in this podcast. And yeah, I really want everyone to read Witchlings. I would like to say to anyone listening who has a bad thing to say about Witchlings, no, just because it has witches in different school groups, it is not Harry Potter. Just because it was written by someone who's not white does not mean there is a copy of every other person who's Latinx, etc, etc. There's been a lot of backlash, which I believe to be mostly based around race for this book, and it needs to stop because Claribel's work is original, it's beautiful, it's diverse in so many ways. I just love it, and we all need to pre-order Witchlings too. So, with that being said, that is the end of my Good Couch Book Awards. Let me know if you want me to do this again next year. Hopefully you've got some recommendations out of this. I've tried to keep it as short as possible, so not going into too much depth about the books. But if any of those titles or descriptions caught your fancy, then please do check them out. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as the Zodiac Reader. I believe on Instagram it has an underscore under its name, and then you can find my personal update Instagram as Rosie Jenner _. Is there anything else that I want to say? I'm going to try and get another episode out before Christmas, but in case I don't, I hope you have the most wonderful Christmas and the happiest new year, and that you have spent all your money on books for Christmas, not only for yourself but also for your loved ones, and that you all enjoy reading together and snuggling up. And if you didn't do that, or if you can't do that, or if you're struggling with being alone or losing someone this year, I want you to know that I'm right here with you, giving you a big old hug, reading with you spiritually, and it's going to be okay. I know that Christmas is a really hard time for a lot of people. I actually did do an episode on my Psych Explanation Point podcast called Coping at Christmas, which deals with themes of depression, anxiety, eating, addiction, and some other means of getting in contact with people and being supported around the Christmas season. But just in case either you don't want to view that or you need someone straight away, if you ever need to talk, I'm always here on my accounts, but also you can contact the Samaritans on, I believe it's 116123, I believe. And they're there 24/7, and they will be open on Christmas, which doesn't go for a lot of the charities that I've suggested in the past, but they are trained for any situation. You don't have to necessarily be suicidal. So yes, that number is 116123. I will also be posting contact numbers on my story. If you haven't already, please do donate to Children's Books Trusts and different fundraisers that are going on this Christmas. You can also contact people like the Campaign Against Living Miserably, Mind, Cruise Bereavement if you're missing someone or you lost someone. There's Shout, which is a text line, which is 85258, where you can just text them and talk to them about how you are. There's nopanic.org.uk, which is mostly centered around anxiety. And then, of course, it's been a hard year for everyone, and we're all snuggled up in our PJs and blankets. But if you are struggling with money this year, then you can contact the National Deadline on Christmas and over the Christmas period, because they are there to help. So that is all to say. Please don't suffer in silence, but I'm hoping that you have a great Christmas season. I hope you have a great Hanukkah season. I hope you have a great holiday season. Whatever you're doing, take some time to yourself and just enjoy a day off if you can get one. And please, if you are buying books or buying anything else, be really, really lovely to your retail workers and wish them a Merry Christmas, because they absolutely deserve the world, especially at this time of year. So I think that's my my final rant of the day. I always seem to be doing some self-righteous rant at the end of these episodes. So again, I hope you have enjoyed the Good Book Awards. I hope you have a happy holiday season. If you need me or want to find me and my suggestions, you can go to the Zodiac Reader _ on Instagram and the Zodiac Reader on Twitter. And I will see you again hopefully soon. Bye.